Pamoja Tutashenda, brothers and sisters. Together, we will win. This is Kafing Mwafrika Moore, your host and producer of Visions of Our People, bringing you part one of a sermon by Jaramogi Abebe Ageyman, also known as Reverend Albert B. Cleage Jr., the founder and first Holy Patriarch of the Shrines of the Black Madonna of the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church and author of The Black Messiah and Black Christian Nationalism. In part one of Jaramogi's sermon entitled, Would It Not Be Better to Go Back to Egypt?, a sermon he preached at the historic Shrine of the Black Madonna No. 1 in Detroit, Michigan. He talks about how an oppressed people at some point have to make a decision whether they should try to build self-determination for themselves and be free, or remain dependent on another people because it's convenient to be a slave. Here's Jaramogi Abebe Ageyman, also known as Reverend Albert B. Cleage Jr., with part one of his sermon on Would It Not Be Better to Go Back to Egypt.
Our scripture lesson was taken from the book of Numbers. It was a short scripture. It had to do with Israel when they first got to the promised land. They were thinking about trying to go in, trying to take the land which God had promised to them. That's why it was called a promised land. God made it possible for them to escape from bondage and slavery. Almost against their own will, they escaped. And God saved them time after time. And always they would lose faith in themselves. And finally they made it across the wilderness and they came to the promised land. And they looked at it and they were frightened. They were afraid. And this little section comes here after they've sent spies in to spy out the land, to see what it is, to find out what's involved. Can they make it? The spies come back and the people are discouraged. They don't know whether the time has come, whether they have strength enough, whether they can take the land which God has given them. And so they're standing at the very outskirts of the promised land trying to decide whether or not to go in. And it says, then all the congregation raised a loud cry. That's all Israel. And the people wept. You know, it's a hard decision when you try to decide whether or not you're going to try to get into the promised land. You can think about it for 400 years, but when the time comes, you don't know. Maybe you better think another 400 years. We can understand Israel standing there. There it was, but there were risks involved, sacrifices involved. And so they stood there, and all the congregation raised a loud cry. They didn't know what to do. Anytime you hear folks making a whole lot of noise, they don't know what they're going to do. So the congregation raised a loud cry. They were uncertain. And then the people wept that night because they had to decide. And that's one of the hardest things we have to do. You know, just making a clear-cut decision. Or we can talk about it. We can say, wouldn't it be nice if, or maybe someday, or maybe our children will. Too bad our fathers didn't. But when you have to make a decision yourself, you know, you cry and you weep all night. Because it's hard to do. I don't say that in any disparaging way. Because when you have to decide, it's a hard thing to do. And the people wept that night. And all the people of Israel murmured against Moses. And that's understandable too. Moses was the leader. He brought them out of Egypt. Brought them across the wilderness to the promised land. He's the one that posed the decision for them. He said, are we going in? And so they had to decide. They cried, they wept, and then in the next morning they got up and they murmured against Moses. And that's understandable too. If you have to make a decision, you look around and you ask yourself, Who put me in this fix? I was going along pretty good. I wasn't making decisions. Who put this situation here where I've got to decide something? You know, you get ready to buy a house. Your wife been telling you we need our own house. We're tired of paying rent. Finally, you sit down, you look at the house, she dragged you out, and then you got to sit there and you got to make up your mind, am I going to buy this house? And you don't know, you figure, well, things liable to change, and you look around. First thing you know, you're just as mad at your wife as you can be. Not because she did anything wrong, but you got something you got to decide, and it's uncomfortable trying to decide. So they murmured against Moses because he made the situation, and they had to blame somebody. So they murmured against Moses. The whole congregation said to them, would that we had died in the land of Egypt. And that's understandable too. Anything back there, whatever we had, that was better than this. Trying to figure things out, trying to take something. The risk, the danger. Would that we had died. They didn't really mean that. They didn't really mean that. But they meant it looked like, just looking back, looked like anything was better than this. It wasn't all that bad back there in Egypt compared with this. Trying to decide, maybe we're going to get killed. Would that we had died in Egypt. Or would that we had died in the wilderness. Just anything. Just so we didn't come to this place where we have to decide. You can understand them, can't you? It's hard. That's what they were talking about. Would that anything had happened so we didn't have to stand right here in this spot, in this time, and decide what we're going to do. Anything. And then they go on, why does the Lord bring us into this land? Now we're going to even go beyond Moses. Our wives and our little ones will become a prey. That's what you always say. I got plenty of courage for myself, but I got to think about my wife and my children. You lying. You lying. You ain't got no courage for yourself. You're just trying to find somebody to blame for not doing anything. Yeah. Because your wife, she ain't proud of no big coward laying around the house. Your little children, they don't have anything to look up to. I would do it, though. I would. Turn me loose, wife and children. Turn me loose. Yeah, they stand there grieving now about their wives and little ones going to become a prey. They knew they had wives and little ones. When they left Egypt, they knew that. All the way across the wilderness, they knew they had wives and little children. All of a sudden, it's a great big concern. And then, would it not be better for us to go back into Egypt? Boy, the human mind is a weird thing. Would it not be better? Now they're making a sensible decision. Sitting out there looking in at the promised land, trying to decide. And then they said to one another, let us go back into Egypt. All right. Let us go back into Egypt. Every generation says the same thing. Every generation gets so far and then they come as getting chicken. Backing up, worrying about their wives and their children. Let's go back into Egypt. We don't have to move forward. No, but let's stay here. What they say, let's cement our gains. Let's stabilize where we are. We don't want to move anymore yet. The first sign of a chicken. Let's don't shake anything now. We've done pretty good. Let's go back into Egypt. Let's go back into slavery. That's what it means. Let's go back into slavery. It's better to be a slave than it is to be free. And in some ways, that's true. If you were a natural-born slave, it's better because you don't have to make any decisions. You don't have to worry about anything. You got your little garbage there to eat 3 times a day. The man puts some kind of something on your back. He tell you what to do, how long to work, when to quit. He tell you how many children to have. You don't have a thing to worry about. So in a sense, it was better back in Egypt. It's always, in a sense, better to be a slave. They always talk about, oh, niggas have such a good time. It's better to be a slave in that kind of sense. Play, don't have to worry about a thing. Get off Friday night, half drunk before you can get home. Don't have nothing to worry about. You don't have to worry what the thing can burn down for Monday morning. You're just living that night. Go back by Wednesday. Go back by Wednesday and ask the man next to you who left with you Friday night, did I have a good time last weekend? He got to tell you what happened, where you went, and what you did. That's the comforts and conveniences of slavery. Nothing to worry about. If worse comes to worse, get on the welfare. If worse comes to worse, because the man gonna have to take care of you anyhow. And he's not gonna give you too much whether you're working or whether you're on the welfare. It's a matter of a few cents difference. Because you're a slave in either way. You're a slave. And there's a certain comfort in that. And you're sitting there looking like you don't believe it. There is. It's easy to do that. I know a whole lot of people who find that very comfortable way to live. Somebody called me up, middle of the night. Been whipped all day, and the man, he just wore me out. I said, what did you do? Didn't do nothing. I said, you want a lawyer? Is that what you're looking for? Yeah. I said, how much money you got? I ain't got nothing. I said, don't you work? Yeah, I work every day, but I ain't got nothing. Why keep it? You got to do something to forget. Let's go back into Egypt. That's an easy way of living. It used to be like that on the plantation. You know what I'm talking about. If you're going to be a man, if you're going to be free, there's certain obligations that come with it. And those are not easy. I was talking to a little child, just came into the nation, and he was very worried in a sense, because he said, I'm always putting in sermons that, we aren't, organized to die, but we may have to. And he said, I'm too young to die. He was really. He's a child. But that's what we all say. Never get so old that you figure you're old enough to die. He's young, so he could say it out loud. I'm too young to die. All of you think that same thing. You're sitting right here now. You think, I'm too young to die. After a while, but I'm too young to die. He was honest and sincere about it. He talked about why always does it have to be said, we ain't organized to die, but we got to fight for this, and it may come to the place where we have to die in the street. Only reason I say it, you all excuse me. Only reason I say it is it's true. That's the only reason I say it. And all you little children, I'm sorry if that upsets you at night. But that's true. We hope it won't be you. Because we hope we'll do it in your stead. Because you've got to carry on the nation. And what we're doing it for you. So we don't want to give you nightmares. But you in a whole new thing now, you see. Because we stood out there and looked at the promised land, and then we decided to go on in. We said, shall we go back to Egypt? And we said, mm-mm. So that makes a difference. For all you little children, that makes a difference. Because we're trying to take you into the promised land.
Brothers and sisters, you have been listening to part one of a sermon by Jaramogi Abebe Ageyman, also known as Reverend Albert P. Cleage Jr., the first Holy Patriarch and founder of the Shrines of the Black Madonna of the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church and author of The Black Messiah and Black Christian Nationalism, entitled, Would It Not Be Better to Go Back to Egypt? Join us again for part two of his message on Visions of Our People.